it's Laura from Homeschooling with Classic Stories. Today we're going to be talking about the two bad mice and three of the things that we did this week. So, the first thing that I wanted to tell you about was our um, first set, which was life skills. So we started by practicing setting the table. If you recall in the story, the thing that attracts the mice in is they see the food on the table and the nicely set table. So we had to look at putting plates on the table, cups, silverware, napkins. We don't sit at the table all too often outside of breakfast and kind of half and half for dinner. And then lunch, they usually eat at a different table in the house. So this was kind of a new, exciting thing for my son to do to try and figure out like how the table should be set. And so he really enjoyed doing that. If you have if you don't eat at the table at all, or you have different styles of dishware, or maybe you have really nice dishware that you don't really want your child playing with. If any of those things are true, the life skill is what's important for this week, and there were a lot of life skills that were talked about within the story. So you could also do sweeping. Hunka Munka sweeps up to help clean up at the end. Um, as well as you could practice things like pushing a cart. If you recall, the dolls come in a pram, and so you could practice like pushing a cart at the grocery store kind of things. So there are a lot of choices that you could make about life skills, but we decided to do a single life skill for this week. And the one that we wanted to focus on from the story was setting the table. So yours does not have to be that one, but that seemed to be one that it was kind of time for. So that's what we did. The next thing that we did was for math this week. For math this week, we didn't do a worksheet. We did the measuring tape again. And for the measuring tape, you are welcome to use a ruler, but just know that then you're kind of limiting yourself um, to, I guess, the size of a ruler. Um, but we're just using a tape measure. And for most of the things that my son measured, we stuck to the millimeter side and centimeter side. And so depending on what it was, we did either millimeters or centimeters. So what we were studying for math this week was the idea of congruency, sort of, and also sort of pre-fractions. So what we did was talking about the dolls. The dolls are not real. They're a smaller size than human sized things, but they're meant to represent larger size things. So we kind of started with that idea by measuring, for example, like a toy banana against a real banana. So that's what we started with the measurements of. For that, we use centimeters just for clarity, in case you're having a hard time figuring out which one to do. And so all that happened was he did the measurement with me, called out the number, and I wrote it down. And then he did the larger item, the real banana, called out the measurement, I wrote it down. And I wrote it down as a fraction. So the banana was whatever size of the other one. So the purpose of this is not to actually teach your child fractions, just for clarity. The purpose of this is to sort of get some of the language in use, and to get the idea that something is smaller than something else. It is the one that should take the fraction. So something is 2/3 the size or is 1/5 the size or whatever. Um, Knowing that the smaller object is the one that's getting talked about as the fractional thing. Also, just sort of making sure that your child is hearing the language, even when it's funny. Um, so, as an example, I just brought a couple of items. So, like, I brought some coins. So, like, I just in measuring the coins, of course, this is done in millimeters, and so this is looks like 15. So this is 15 millimeters. And this particular one is 25. So normally, if you were doing fractions, you would reduce it down, right? You wouldn't say 15/25. You wouldn't normally say that. But to make sure that your child is hearing the language and hearing the numbers that they called out, make sure you retain those numbers. So the number was 15 and the number was 25. So make sure that you write it down as 15/25 and don't reduce it down. If your child is for some reason ready to reduce down, this may not be the right math skill for you to do this week. You could still focus on this idea of fractions, but that's a lot more math than my son is anywhere close to being ready for. So just hearing the addition of the endings onto it when you talk about the fractions. We did a lot of things, a lot of real life things. So like coins were great. Also we did like two different sizes of water, and that was worked well. And then it kind of took longer than I expected, and so it sort of devolved. I guess it didn't devolve, it perhaps evolved into the whiteboard in our house. We do have a whiteboard in our house, not for like instructional use, but more like coloring and drawing. The kids just play on it. Um, so just on the whiteboard, just, mommy draws two circles and then I want to measure it kind of thing. So be prepared that this may take a long time or it may take not very long at all, depending on how interested your child is in this idea, um, and whether or not they are taking to this idea of talking about the smaller one being a fractional value. So that's what we did for math this week. This practices a lot of skills besides pre-fractions. It's also practicing measurement skills, which are actually included. That is something that should be included in pre-K. So measuring is the important skill, not just speaking out kind of the pre-fraction ideas. So anyway, let's take a look at cutting and pasting. That's the worksheet that we did this week. So you'll find two different worksheets within in down below. So you'll find two worksheets. The first one looks like this. So on this one, it's just blank. And it just says mouse cut and paste, and it's just got the little, this week I chose a little cake set to represent the table setting. The paper that you really, really need is this one. So for this particular paper, this is the mouse. This is all of the shapes that you will need to create a mouse face. The first thing that you should do is have your child color these shapes. If you're not really sure what you're looking at here, this is the head. Then you have two ears, two eyes, a nose, and the two inner circles for the ears. So this will be a layered cut and paste. The only thing that I really restricted my son on was I made sure that he colored this and this the same color, and this the same color, so that they would be matching. If your child does not care that things match when they're done, then it doesn't matter. But I knew that if these two things didn't match and he realized later on that they were both ears, that would be really upsetting. So just kind of, if your child is of that sort, go ahead and say, hey, these are both going to be ears. Let's color them the same color. This will be the inside of the ears. Let's color them the same color. So my child decided that mice, I'll go ahead and show you his, that mice are orange. And so we have an orange mouse. So you see that the circles ended up being for the ears, the interior part, the two eyes, the nose, and then the heart shape became the face. This is, of course, a coloring and pasting activity. um, I perhaps did this at a time of day that was not the best, and I was kind of in a rush. And so what you see here is an example of my son using fully adult scissors that I had in the kitchen. He was really eager to cut after coloring, and so I was not prepared. I did not have all the things out. I didn't have the glue stick out or his scissors. And so you see that this one went really badly, and this was sort of an upsetting time for him because, why can't I use mommy's scissors? Like, why did this turn out so bad? So that was kind of my fault. Do be sure that you have all the materials prepared before you start. So then I went and got his scissors, and that's why you see like the shapes got better. So anyway, let's go ahead and finish talking about this one. The only thing that I wanted to point out with this was making sure that your child understood what the shapes were. If your child is still struggling with shapes, you have two ovals, you have five circles, And then you have a heart. If your child is still learning their shapes and learning their colors, this is a great time to review that. So make sure that you do that if that is part of your child's needs. So you can find this down below, and I hope that you enjoy it. If you do enjoy it, leave a comment. And I will see you in our next video to talk about the other three things that we did this week.